So, good morning, Lana, and welcome to our today's lesson. I promise you that we're going to look into something we call food chain. A food chain. What's a food chain? So, our lesson is going to be very brief, but with a lot of things, so you must be very careful for us to be able to understand this, because it's a question in the exam, even in class 8. So, a food chain, you realize that as we were talking about plants and animals, of course, we dealt with animals. We found that there's a relationship between plants and animals. Like we saw, plants depend on animals for carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide. And this carbon dioxide is the one that is used by plants to make food. What I call plant food. Why am I insisting about plant food? Because this is a question in the exam. They talk about plant nutrients and plant food. Plant food is done during photosynthesis. That's where now this is manufactured. So you realize that animals will get carbon dioxide from, plants will get carbon dioxide from animals, and at the same time, you realize that plants, after receiving the carbon dioxide from animals, they will use this to make food. In return, you will realize that animals will come and later feed on these plants directly or indirectly. But most of the time, they will do it directly. Like, for example, you realize that a cow goes and feeds on the grass. So it has fed on this directly. But you realize also that the other animals which cannot feed on these plants directly. So there are those animals like, talk about lion. The lion cannot eat grass, even if meat is not there. So it has to die. But now we say a lion benefits from plants indirectly. Why are we saying directly? This lion feeds on a gazelle, and this gazelle feeds on grass. So this one is eating grass indirectly, while a cow feeds on plants directly. So you can see there's a direct dependency and indirect dependency. So when animals depend on one another or depend on plants for food, either directly or indirectly, we call it a food chain relationship. There's a relationship there where animals are feeding on plants either directly or indirectly. You can also have animals feeding on others. So it can be directly or indirectly. So what is a food chain? You can simply say a food chain is a feeding relationship. A feeding relationship that shows how animals get their food either directly or even indirectly. So that relationship that shows how animals will get their food either directly or indirectly is what we call a food chain. Later on after this, I'll teach you about something else called a food pyramid, and we'll see how it progresses. So simply to understand this, I want to show you a sample of a food chain, then we can be able to now discuss the different components of our food chain. The different components of our food chain. I will start a simple food chain, an example one. An example of a food chain. I'll talk about grass. And this grass will be eaten by gazelle. A gazelle will be eaten by maybe a lion. A lion later, after it dies, it can be fed by a vulture. But let me put a straight one so that we see what will happen. Grasshopper eaten by a snake, and a snake will be fed by an eagle. Have an eagle or even a vulture. So for us to be able to understand a food chain, we need to have these four parts. So the first part, now I'm coming to the components of a food chain. Now the first component is the grass. Now we say grass is the one that's providing food for every item on the food chain. So we call this one producers. So all green plants are producers. They are the one that begins the food chain. Without the grass, we cannot have all these other components of the food chain. So we say all green plants are producers. And I want to talk about producers. I finish with it completely because there is another question in this particular area which is asked in the food chain. And I think I need to mention it at this point, that which of the following is the most abundant in a food chain? The most abundant component in a food chain is the producers. Why? They are the major, because they are the one that provides for every component in the food chain. So we are saying these are the most abundant. Green plants are the most abundant in a food chain, and we call them producers. So if you see such a question, your answer will be producers. Or if they have not put producers as an answer there, they will give you plants or green plants, or they give you a type of a plant. So those are the categories of answers you can be able to find there. So number 2, producers are fed by the second category, and that is the grasshopper. Grasshopper just represents the second category, and this second category is called primary consumer. After having the producers, the second part is for the primary consumers. These are the ones that feed on grass directly. They feed on green plants directly. So this one eat green plants. We can talk about the gazelle, talk about the cows, we can talk about the sheep, we can talk about any grazers and browsers. We talk about browsers, we talk about those that feed on both grass and twigs, the leaves. Like the cases of a giraffe. Giraffe feeds on both grass and the twigs. Let's talk about the goat. Goat is both a browser and a grazer because it feeds on both grass and twigs. Twigs, I mean about to do with the leaves. So all those that feed on green plants directly are called primary consumers. Then away from there, we go to what we call the secondary consumer. Secondary or the secondary consumer. The secondary consumer. Now, a secondary consumer feeds on the primary consumer also directly. In this case, we talk about carnivores, carnivorous animals. These are herbivores, just to mention. So, herbivores, what are herbivores? Herbivores are those animals that feed on plants. From the word herb. Herb means plants. Herb means plants. So herbivores. So these herbivores feed directly on grass or green plants. So in the third one, we're talking about secondary consumer, and we have said these are majorly carnivorous animals. In this place, you can place lion when you have gazelle on this side. So you can have grass, gazelle, lion. So lion there is a carnivorous animals. So the last part, which depends on this is an animal that feeds on another. An animal that feeds on another. So they are also carnivorous, but their name is not carnivorous in this case. They are called scavengers. So here we have what we call the scavengers. And good examples of such scavengers, we have the vulture, we have the eagle. Sometimes we also refer as the hyena as a scavenger, because hyena cannot be able to kill an animal. Most of the times you find it feeding on the remains of animals that were eaten by maybe a lion, a cheetah, etc. So we can also place, in some cases, hyena on that particular category. So in a food chain, we have 4 parts. We have the producers, which are the green plants, and they are the most abundant in that particular food chain. Then we have grasshoppers, which are the secondary and primary consumer. Then the snake, in our case, which are secondary consumers, and the eagles, which are scavengers. So we have said scavengers are animals that feed on other animals, but when they are dead, they cannot prey on them when alive. So they only wait for them to die, either, or they are killed for them to be fed. So having said that, I want to talk about the arrow. The arrow, if you look at my arrows here, we say the arrow points to the eater who eats. The arrow points to the eater. That is very, very important, and I put it in a quotation mark because it's not the right term to be used there. But this one shows who eats who. So if the arrow points to, like for this one, the arrow is pointing to the grasshopper. That means the grasshopper is the eater of grass in this case. So this is the eater of the grass. In this case, the arrow points to the snake, meaning that snake is the one that is eating grasshopper. It's not the other way around, that grasshopper is feeding on a snake. That is not possible. So in a food chain, the arrow points to the eater. That is very, very important for you to note. Then something else I also need to mention is I've already mentioned that the scavengers feed on leftovers. The already that is killed is what they feed on. I want to mention something else here before I come to a second type of a food chain that we'll be able to see and then be able to explain. I want to talk about the issue of decomposers. Lana, when we were talking about the dependence between plants and animals, somewhere I talked about decomposition. If I did not talk about it, then I'm going to talk about it here. After a plant or an animal dies, it needs to be decomposed. It needs to decay and rot. And the ones that are responsible for this decomposition are the fungi. Call them the fungi. That's the bacteria and all that. All these are responsible for decomposition. They are also very, very important when it comes to a food chain. They are the last part. So after the ego, of course the ego will die one time in life. So it will be decomposed by what we call the decomposers. Though we will not include it here, but you will see it when it comes to a food pyramid. You'll be able to see where decomposers are found. But just to mention it that it is part of in case you meet a food chain that is having decomposers, don't be shocked. This is part of the food chain, and it comes later there. It's the last part because that one does not feed directly. It only feeds on them when they are dead. So having said that, I want us to look at a second type of a food chain where many learners go wrong. And this food chain looks like this. We have algae eaten by small fish, eaten by the big fish, not the one that swallowed the Gojona. Then we have the kingfish. The kingfish. You will realize that this is a very tricky one. If we are told to come and label this food chain, it's a tricky type of a food chain. Now there are two things I know. You know what a small fish is. I know I know you know what a big fish is, but sometimes you might not know what a kingfish is. Now there's a kingfish and a kingfisher. I want to get the difference. A kingfish is a type of a big fish. Talk about the big ones, the sharks and all that. That is a kingfish. But there's also something else known as kingfisher. Now, Lana, a kingfisher is a bird. It's not a fish. So there's a difference between kingfish and a kingfisher. Kingfish, you learn it in class 8 when we'll be dealing with the feeding adaptations of animals. And you realize that what we call the birds of prey, those birds that feed on meat, call them carnivorous birds. Like for example, the eagle. We have so many others when we'll be dealing with how the beaks are adapted to feeding on prey and their toes. You realize that there's somewhere we're going to mention about kingfisher. Kingfisher is a bird of prey. It feeds on fish inside the water. So its food is fish inside the water. So it will go fishing inside the water. That's why it's called kingfisher. Because it can fish anywhere where our normal fishermen cannot get, but these ones can go there. So in this particular food chain, we can be able to label it. Let's begin from this side. We said algae. Learners, I already showed you what an algae is, just where we had our tongue there, near class 5 green. You have ever seen what algae is? It's green in color. And we said anything that is green in color, not clothes, talk about plants. All plants that are green in color, they are producers. So in this case, this becomes our producers. The second part is the small fish. Now the small fish eats algae, so this becomes our primary consumer. You can say PC. Then the small fish will be fed by big fish. The big fish becomes secondary consumer. Remember what we said, Lana, that the third part, which is secondary consumers, these are majorly carnivorous animals. And so this big fish is a carnivorous fish, a carnivorous animal. It's feeding on a primary consumer, which is also a fish. But this small fish does not feed on meat. It rather feeds on green plants. So the last one is the secondary tertiary consumer, tertiary consumer. And our tertiary consumer, I did not mention it here. Actually, Lana is supposed to be called tertiary consumer. I just said they are scavengers, that class, but they are called tertiary consumers. Tertiary consumers. I'm sorry for that. So our last part is tertiary consumer. Tertiary consumers, they are mostly scavengers. They feed on already leftovers or already dead animals. So that's where we are going to leave it at this point. So from there, you can make as many food chains as possible. You can have so many of them. You can begin another one like grass. I said the arrow points to the eater, eaten by grasshopper. And this grasshopper is eaten by chicken. And then the chicken is eaten by hawk. So if you ask, which of the following is the tertiary consumer in this food chain? Lana, it's very, very important that these producers, primary consumer, secondary consumer, and then tertiary consumer. You can be able to see it very clear like that. So the last part is tertiary consumer. Now away from that, then I want to draw lastly what we call, you can make as many, I want you to make at least 5 food chains of your own. Pick anything. You can even have a pawpaw eaten by, don't say human being because nobody is human being here. So you can take just any example of a green plant, you can place it here and then construct a food chain. But don't talk about human beings here, because you won't find anything after the human being. You don't find any other particular animal that can feed on human being. So the last one that I want to talk about is a food pyramid. If I can wrap this and be able to get a space to write. Now, it's very, very easy to draw to call a food pyramid. I know in mathematics, class 7 and 8, you'll be doing pyramids. And we said a pyramid forms a sharp ending, that is an apex that is very sharp, while a prism forms an edge. Edge is a line at the finishing point. So what a pyramid is just this thing I'm going to draw here. So that is a pyramid. But in our pyramid, we need to have some sections. So the first section here, remember what we said? What is most abundant in a food chain? If you remember that question, what we discussed and said, we said producers. So in our case here, it's going to be producers. Sometimes you are given a question about pyramid and they omit one part. They omit one part, or they just draw these partitions and they leave it like that. They ask you what is likely to be found at point X. They have not labeled it anything. So it's for you, learner. Before you answer that question, you start labeling from down here. So after producers, we go to primary consumer. After primary consumer, we go to secondary consumer, then tertiary consumer, and lastly we have what we call decomposers. So that's where, learner, I wanted to show you where decomposers comes in. It's the last part in a food chain or a food pyramid. Most of the times in a food chain, they will not write it, they will not draw it. But when it comes to a food pyramid, you must include it. And take this very seriously. You need to begin labeling from bottom. Don't ever, at any given time, start labeling from above here. You'll miss it. So you label from here, producers, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, and then lastly we have decomposers. Then sometimes they also ask you, what type of animal can be found at point labeled X? Point labeled X is secondary consumer. What do we see about secondary consumers, learner? We see they are carnivorous animals. So I don't expect any human being to pick for me sheep. You'll have missed that question just from the beginning. You don't write sheep. You now look in that category, you look for a carnivorous animal. In that group you are given of 4 answers. Now you look for carnivorous animal. You must remember that producers are green plants. Primary consumers are always herbivores. Secondary consumers are always carnivorous animals, and then tertiary consumers are scavengers. If you remember that, learner, you can handle any question about food chain and food pyramid. So that's where we will stop today. But remember, I've told you construct 5 food chains of different things that you choose to do. So just remember what I said. The arrow points to the eater. So until next time, learner, I want to wish you well. Let us continue to do a lot of studies back at home. Let us sanitize and keep safe. God bless you.